Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. A couple seasons back, we stretched the definition of crossover when we looked at Nightwing/Huntress, since, while the two characters do inhabit the same world and the same city, Helena was often on the outs with the bats. Hope you've done your yoga, cause we're stretching yet again, as I'm taking issue with Batman/Huntress Cry for Blood, a follow-up that delves deeper into the origins of this questionable vigilante. Let's start with issue number 1 and see if these comics make us want to turn the page or turn our heads. The cover is uncomplicated yet very dramatic. Bats standing behind Bertinelli, who has actual blood covering her hands. And now we know how she lost her job as a dental hygienist. When the pursuer becomes the pursued. When the noun becomes the adjective. Written by Greg Rucka, with art by Rick Burchett, Terry Beatty, and Tatiana Wood, we open to the bat signal in the sky, and a body floating in the harbor. As the police fish it out on a 2-page spread, Helena narrates that despite what others think, they don't know anything about her, what she wants, why she does what she does, and they never even tried to find out. She actually hoped to parlay this whole violent vigilante thing into a talk show gig. Who knew? He, meaning Batman, made up his mind that she doesn't belong, seeing what he wants to see. So does that mean he wants to see a distinctive crossbow bolt in that corpse's chest? Weird. As Pointy Ears goes to her apartment to snoop around, noticed by a figure in the rain, narration continues about Sicilian culture that after 2 millennia of occupation, looking to the state for justice was considered foolish, and those that did so called infame, a renegade or rat. Omerta is the preferred method, meaning to take care of one's own business, their own way, solo, to restore their honor. When blood cries for blood, you answer the call, and you answer it alone. Omerta doesn't believe in group chat. When Helena catches him in her office, he asks where she's been tonight, since her cousin Claudio Panessa, capo of the Vigilante organization, was pulled out of the drink, potentially tortured, and a bolt very much like hers in his chest. She's been home grading papers all night, and her hair is wet from the shower she just took, not the rain outside. She had nothing to do with her cousin's death, but is surprised it took this long for Claudio to meet his maker, since he's the worst of Gotham's 5 families, though Helena cites her mom as being the only good one of the bunch. When she knocked over merchandise to hustle protection money from a small-time shop owner, she always cleaned up afterwards. After a brief staring contest, he finally asks if she killed Claudio, and she tells him to go to hell, so the Caped Crusader and his scowl leave, again watched by the mysterious figure on the street, but not before giving a warning. If I find there's blood on your hands, I'll take you down myself. Let's hope he's not counting the cover, or this is going to be one short review. She narrates that if a body was found with a batarang piercing it, bats would never doubt Nightwing's innocence for an instant. Of course not, he has his own signature throwing weapons. Ever hear of the wingding? But of course, if a crossbow offs a mobster, it must be crazy ol' Huntress. But what the world's greatest detective doesn't understand is that this is about family. Prepare to reminisce. The Bertinellis have been in Gotham for over a century, as long as any of the blue bloods like the Waynes, when her great-grandfather Giuseppe arrived from Sicily at age 12. In order to be sworn into the Mafia, you have to kill, making you a man of honor. But if you do it particularly well, you are a man of valor. And in this regard, Giuseppe was quite gifted, which is a more subdued way of saying he's a mass murderer than that rejection letter he got from America's Got Talent. Once Prohibition was enacted, he decided he wanted control over all 5 families, managing to recruit the Berettis and the Galantes to supply booze to a dried-up Gotham. But since the Enzarios and the Casamentos were doing the same thing, it led to war, costing Giuseppe 3 of his sons. Being a man of valor and committing to Omerta, it's not difficult to imagine how he retaliated. Eventually, the Enzaleros sold out the Casamentos, and Giuseppe became Don Bertinelli, and further dubbed Capo di Tutti Capi, the boss of bosses. And ever since, the Casamentos have held a grudge against both the Enzarilos and the Bertinellis. You could really feel the tension at those weekend team-building seminars at the Gotham Marriott. Whispered insults hurled at each other in between key speakers. staring daggers at each other over the breakfast buffet bar. After his death, his only surviving son Alfredo became the godfather, and led the families through a decade of happiness, until the Panessas came along, specifically Tommaso, a man of honor from the old country, who wanted part of the profits as the sixth family in Gotham. Alfredo figured 5 was enough, and that was that, leading to 10 years of feuding with the Panessas as they tried to establish territory for themselves. Then one day, Alfredo's son Franco, Helena's dad, met Tommaso's kid sister Maria, who would later become his wife and Huntress's mother. Grandpa Alfredo passed away, Franco became head criminal honcho, and Maria bore son Pino and later Helena. However, none of this would open the books for the Panessas to get a piece of the action, like Tommaso had thought, Franco claiming there wasn't enough room for another crime family.
Didn't you get the memo?
When Helena was 8 years old, one dinner with her family would be her last. They decided to switch to late lunches instead. A man busted down the door, fired 3 precise shots, and walked out, leaving a stunned, horrified little girl, her parents and brother dead, asking why. To this day, Helena is no closer to answering that question, only that blood cries for blood. The Galante family took over for the Bertinellis, the Panessas were allowed into the 5 families, sent her to Sicily, then later to a boarding school in Switzerland, where she'd get derided for being Sicilian and a mafia princess. Now, why hasn't Disney done an animated feature like that? A princess of the mob with a Tommy gun who gets things done. Oh, right, the murders. Throw in a few songs and a wisecracking bore, it'll be just fine. In the present day, Helena's gone to her uncle Tommaso's estate for Claudio's memorial service. It's here we get various mafia faces and names, probably a kind of suspect list. No need to go through them all, since we'll be seeing many of them later. Then she greets the current boss of bosses and her literal godfather, Pasquale Galante Jr. She's sent to her aunt while the men continue discussing the Huntress. While Grace welcomes her niece, her daughter Monica claims to see no cousin, and gets mama smacked for it, warned never to speak in such a way to family, and certainly not to a Bertinelli. But Monica snipes back that the Bertinellis died years ago, which doesn't result in another slap, but does make things awkward for Helena until she decides to leave. She again offers her condolences and passes by an argument that goes from blaming Huntress for Claudio's death, with one surprising outlier claiming there's no evidence, to infighting and threats among themselves. Turns out the police have investigated them more times for gunshots fired playing Monopoly than for their drug running or murders. As she drives off in the rain, Helena narrates that, she hates them all for what they are, and that one of those old men destroyed her life, hiring an assassin to kill her family, only to leave her alive for some reason. She suddenly stops at the sight of a figure standing in the middle of the road on a rainy night, and asks if they're crazy. The individual, the one that was outside her apartment earlier, says no, though asks if she's crazy. Then the question makes it clear he knows she's the Huntress. Helena's first instinct upon seeing him is the same as everyone else's, the desire to draw a goofy mustache on his face. Issue 2's cover sees Batman against a chimney, one hand holding a wound from a bolt that's in his other hand. Sheesh, Huntress really doesn't like being corrected while playing 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. And now, she cannot be forgiven. Well, yeah, that one stuck in his cape looks like it narrowly missed his bat junk. Who wouldn't hold a grudge? This guy may be called the Question, but Huntress considers him a royal pain in the butt. Probably not helped when he recites a story about a man dreaming he was a butterfly, going from flower to flower, with all the smells, sights, and sensations that entails, until he woke up with a realization. He didn't know if he was a man dreaming he was a butterfly.
Nobody ever suspects the butterfly.
Or a butterfly dreaming he was a man. I guess she did suspect the butterfly. Anyway, she asks what his deal is, says that he's out of his mind, and takes off, as Question takes her barbs in stride. The next morning, Helena grabs a coffee while recapping her cousin's death, then notices the newest issue of The Interrogator, which has an article throwing suspicion on her alter ego, which is coupled with an angry, gun-toting artist's rendering of her. Is that supposed to be me? I've never met Rob Liefeld. I've never even been to the Wildstorm universe. What the expletive? She's certain someone paid the writer, Karen Fraser, for the story, but in case the cops really are on the lookout for her, it only complicates things further. Not to mention, if Batman is convinced of her guilt, he's likely to go to Commissioner Gordon with what he knows about her, which is practically everything. That's our Batman! She'll be arrested, unmasked, and targeted by the five families, not only for her vigilantism against the mob, but for the familial betrayal, labeled infame. She goes to her teaching job at the local high school, swooned over by a couple of students, and begins her class for the day. Today's lesson is helping Miss Bertinelli come up with some plausible alibis. Dick Grayson is video calling Barbara Gordon, insisting on Huntress's innocence, and that the bolt in the mobster's heart is circumstantial, but Oracle insists it's physical proof of her guilt. Sure, anyone can buy a crossbow, but who on earth could possibly have ammunition for it that has gray and purple fletching? What, you think someone took some of her bolts from previous crime scenes and used it to frame her? Like the mob would want to frame a vigilante that's specifically targeting them? Where do you get these ideas? Nightwing asks if the evidence is so conclusive, why hasn't Bats brought her in? Meaning even he's not entirely sure. Grayson wants the chance to talk to Huntress, which Babs isn't very surprised by, and tells him to let her know when he gets into town. Meanwhile, at the Casamento estate, a couple goons are sharing a drink and talking about Helena when she paid her respects, though she didn't really attend the formal service. Mario makes several hints at his lustful attraction to her, so Pappy Casamento smacks him for his salacious remarks, much to the young man's confusion. The attack utilizing a copy of the interrogator. We can pay off cops and politicians. We can sell drugs that ruin people's lives. We can murder our enemies for everything from attempts on our lives to petty slights. But we do not objectify the broads. I raised you better than that. Helena is making herself dinner when she hears a knock at her window, causing her to instinctively grab a nearby carving knife. But it's Nightwing, who at least has the courtesy to knock. Knowing he's not going to just leave, she signals for him to use the skylight. After some banter about their previous fling, he says he never figured she killed Claudio, but can tell she's in trouble and wants to help. She angrily reminds how little assistance she got during No Man's Land, Batman allegedly manipulating her, and Wing snaps back that a lot of choices were made during that tumultuous year of devastation, like how Huntress turned her back on the other capes. But she insists it's probably what his boss wanted the whole time. He's not my boss. Technically, I'm an outside contractor. It's been a while since I read No Man's Land, so I can't speak much to what she's still irked about. Suffice to say, whether Bats was entirely right or wrong, or partially so in either case, Helena still doesn't feel like she can fully trust him or his allies. After an awkward silence, Nightwing tries to charm his way to sharing dinner with her, likely to further attempt diplomacy, but she tells him to leave, making it clear she neither wants or needs his help. He amscrays, though she looks out her curtains across the street, where he's still watching, before bounding off, like he's thinking, "Oh geez, she saw me!" and is leaving embarrassed as quickly as he can. As Question watches from nearby, Helena's narration reminds that this matter is about her, so Omerta demands she take care of it herself, especially since she can't accept help from those that don't accept her. She suits up, noting how she took 3 shots from the Joker to prevent him from committing mass infanticide, and how that experience changed her, made her realize she doesn't want to die, as the panel gives great focus to the cross that latches her cape. Nothing says upholding the teachings of Jesus Christ like actively seeking vengeance through violence. And yes, that's a joke, please don't take it seriously. Huntress goes to the apartment of journalist Karen Fraser to ask questions about that article about her. Good thing she was listed in the phone book. Unfortunately, the journalist cannot answer any questions right now because she's on her couch, dead tired. Oh, wait, no, just dead. She's just dead. 2 bolts in her torso. But the body is still warm, meaning this was pretty recent. Before Bertinelli can look for clues, police knock at the door, claiming they got a report about a prowler. And as Huntress heads out the window she came in, she sees 3 squad cars below, and hears more on the way, which seems a little excessive for one supposed prowler. On the other hand, this is Gotham, so maybe this prowler has a weird gimmick like throwing rabid badgers at people or juggling canisters of acid. She swings away as Nightwing watches from across the street, and catches up when she's stopped by Batman. Whether she's innocent or not, he's not about to let her continue on fighting the police. If she goes with him, her identity stays secret. She declines, but he wasn't asking. Look, in another universe, you're my daughter, so I think that gives me a little extra authority over you. Also, I'm Batman. Knowing that she can't win a fight against Pointy Ears, let alone him and Wing, she opts for escape, using suppressing fire to make way to the ledge. Batsy hits her with a couple of throwing blades that take away her balance and send her to the ground, which causes one of her bolts to fire accidentally at Nightwing. He moves out of the way and grabs her, insisting that she stop, but to Huntress's horror, they see that stray bolt hit the Dark Knight in his side, much like on the cover. He snaps the bulk of the projectile off and weakly tells his ward to stop her. Huntress insists it was an accident, but all Grayson is concerned with is that she hurt his surrogate dad. I mean, Pointy Ears caused her to fall and subsequently misfire, and you got out of the line of fire. In a way, you all kind of participated in this. Teamwork! He begins pummeling her something fierce, so she grabs one of Batman's blade that was stuck in her gauntlet, swipes at his shoulder, and gets to the ledge as helicopters, presumably police, begin to arrive, and she drops down to the river below. She's soon pulled out by the Question, who's been tailing her this whole time, and being the closest thing she has to an ally right now, wants to take her to meet a friend of his. Huntress doesn't plan on going anywhere while she can still fight, so part 2 ends with him knocking her out with a kick to the face. Like I said, a royal pain in the butt. And since he's royalty, you gotta bow or curtsy, and that just makes the butt pain worse. Who is framing the Huntress? Why is the Question involving himself? And is his friend going to turn out to be Snuffleupagus from Sesame Street? Tune in next week to see if any of these queries get any answers. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.